his words barely coherent. "What are you talking about?" Jack asked, bewildered. "Don't play games with me, Victoria," Mr. Bradford said, ignoring Jack. "When I tried to reach you on the phone here, they told me about the wedding." Wedding. Vicky looked around at the decorations, then back at her father, a dawning realization on her face. That was one of Jack's friends who got married. Mr. Bradford blinked, his anger momentarily deflating, replaced by a look of utter confusion. "Then you're not?" "No." "Oh, how nice," Mr. Bradford said, a sarcastic edge to his voice. "You've just done wonders for my Elsa. I feel so much better." He clutched his stomach dramatically. "Oh, Dad," Vicky said, her frustration mounting. She turned to Jack, her voice laced with despair. "What's wrong?" "Jack and I just broke up." Mr. Bradford's head snapped up, his eyes suddenly sharp and attentive. "Really? Really? I'm so sorry," Jack muttered, still reeling from Vicky's rejection and her father's sudden appearance. "Oh, Dad, I feel so miserable," Vicky wailed, collapsing onto the sofa, the bouquet forgotten. "Oh, there," Mr. Bradford said, his voice surprisingly gentle as he sat beside her. Jack watched, a mixture of annoyance and disbelief. The man was a master of emotional manipulation. "If he means that much to you, I'll see what I can do about patching things up." Vicky looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "You'd do that?" "I just want you to be happy," Mr. Bradford said, his voice dripping with paternal concern. "You're all I've got. Now, where do we find this Jack?" He looked around, as if Jack wasn't standing right there. "There's nothing you can do, Dad," Vicky said, shaking her head. "Let's go." She stood up, her face streaked with tears. "Don't you think you'd better fix your face up?" Mr. Bradford suggested, ever the "All right," Vicky agreed, heading for the bathroom. Jack, left alone with his thoughts, felt a fresh wave of despair. He had lost her. He walked out onto the balcony, needing the cool night air to clear his head. Terry found him there a few minutes later, a glass of champagne in her hand. "Jack, what are you doing out here?" "Vicky wants me to live with her," he confessed, his voice heavy. "Then what are you doing out here?" Terry asked, her eyebrow raised. "I asked Vicky to marry me, but she turned me down," Jack explained, running a hand through his hair. "Why? See, her parents got divorced, so she's afraid to get married." "And you're afraid to live with her?" Terry probed gently. "No, Terry. No, it's a little more complicated than that," Jack insisted, turning away. "You just don't understand. All right?" Terry took a sip of her champagne, her gaze steady. "You were lucky enough to find someone you love, and the only thing that really matters is that you're together." Jack paused, the words striking a chord. "Come on, Terry. Where'd you get that from?" "From a greeting card." Terry smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. "From you." "Huh?" "That's what you told Janet when she wanted to break up with Philip." Jack stared at her. The memory slowly He had said that. He had told Janet that love was about being together, regardless of the venue or the specific path. He had preached the very philosophy he was now struggling to accept. "I said that, didn't I?" he whispered, a dawning realization washing over him. "Yes, you did," Terry confirmed, her smile widening. "Thanks, Terry," Jack said, a sudden lightness in his step. He turned, a new resolve in his eyes, and strode back into the apartment. Vicky was just emerging from the bathroom, her face dabbed clean, though her eyes still held a lingering sadness. Mr. Bradford stood beside her, a look of smug satisfaction on his face. Jack walked directly to Vicky, his gaze unwavering. "Vicky, let's do it. Let's live together." Vicky's eyes widened, a gasp escaping her lips. "Oh, Jack." A radiant smile broke through her sadness, illuminating her face. Mr. Bradford, however, looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. "What did you say?" "Oh," he said, "we're going to live together," Vicky explained, her voice bubbling with happiness, oblivious to the storm brewing in her father's eyes. "I know what he said," Mr. Bradford snarled, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. He stepped between Jack and Vicky, his arms outstretched as if to shield his daughter from a plague. "I didn't even say hello to you yet." He glared at Jack. "Hi. Don't touch me. Don't touch my daughter." "Dad, it wasn't his idea," Vicky interjected, trying to defend Jack. "Then it was your mother," Mr. Bradford accused, his eyes narrowing. "She put you up to this, didn't she?" "Dad, It was my idea, Vicky insisted, stepping around him to stand beside Jack. I had to talk Jack into it. Mr. Bradford gasped, clutching his stomach. Oh, it's spreading. Jack watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Mr. Bradford doubled over, groaning dramatically. Mr. Bradford, Jack began, trying to appeal to his reason. Vicky, please, let me try, Vicky pleaded, trying to soothe her father. Mr. Bradford, look at it this way, Jack continued, choosing his words carefully. You're gaining a daughter. Mr. Bradford straightened up, his eyes blazing. Stop it, Victoria. He turned to Vicky, his voice laced with venom. Sir, if I may? You may not, Mr. Bradford snapped, cutting Jack off. He took a deep, shaky breath, composing himself, though his eyes still held a furious glint. Victoria, let me get this straight, just in case any of our friends happen to ask. You'll be living in some godforsaken place with a cook, without benefit of clergy, raising my grandchildren, who will be nameless. He paused, letting the full weight of his disapproval sink in. Dad, please, Vicky whispered, mortified. Have I left something out? Mr. Bradford asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Yes, your blessing, Vicky said, her voice small but firm. Mr. Bradford's lips twitched. You noticed? Oh, he sighed dramatically. I am happy about one thing, Victoria, that your mother lived to see this day. He turned and stalked out, slamming the door behind him. Vicky looked at Jack, a mixture of exasperation and amusement on her face. Your father is really something. Yeah, Jack agreed, shaking his head. I didn't think he'd take it so well. Vicky laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. What made you change your mind? Jack pulled her close, kissing her forehead. I just don't want to live without you. Jack, Janet's voice called from the doorway, her head peeking in. No. Everybody's waiting for you down to the party. Yeah, right, Jack said, still holding Vicky. Come on, Vicky. They joined the party at Larry's apartment, a celebration that now felt doubly joyous. But amidst the laughter and congratulations, a new chapter had begun, one that promised both immense happiness and significant challenges. The following days were a whirlwind of packing, sorting, and emotional goodbyes. Jack's apartment, once a vibrant hub of shared lives, was slowly being stripped bare. Janet and Philip were settling into their newlywed bliss, and Terry, with a glint of adventure in her eyes, was preparing for her own journey. Thank you, Jack grunted, hoisting a heavy box labeled Jack's Cookbooks. No. Ow, Larry complained, struggling with another box. What did you pack in here? It weighs a ton. I'm sorry, Jack, Vicky said, watching them with a sympathetic smile. She was packing her own things, her excitement tempered by the enormity of the step they were taking. Hey, you guys, Terry called out, carrying a small suitcase. How many more bags are there? Just a few, Jack replied, wiping sweat from his brow. Mr. Furley, ever the dramatic one, surveyed the dwindling contents of the apartment with a mournful expression. Gee, with all three of you moving out at once, I should have rented a freight car. He was losing his tenants, his surrogate family, and the prospect clearly saddened him. Get it on, Harry, Larry grumbled, struggling with a particularly awkward box. Be careful with it. All right. Cinderella, Cinderella, Mr. Furley muttered, a sad refrain. Did you check the bathroom? Jack, Terry asked, ever organized. Oh, I forgot. Terry, I'll do it right now, Jack said, heading towards the small bathroom. Okay, thanks. Janet, who had popped in to offer moral support and a plate of cookies, looked at Terry with a puzzled expression. Why did you quit your job at the hospital? I thought you liked nursing. Terry smiled, a serene look on her face. Oh, I'm still going to be a nurse, but someplace where I feel more useful. Oh, you see, I've always dreamed about going off to some remote island and tending to the needs of the poor, sick natives, and that's what I'm going to do. Janet's eyes widened. Terry, that's just beautiful. What island? Hawaii, Terry announced, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Janet blinked, then burst out laughing. Excuse me, aren't you finished taping that yet? She called to Larry, who was struggling with a roll of packing tape. Yeah, it's ready to go. Here we go. Well, just stand there, Mr. Furley instructed, trying to help. Get the bottom half. Larry. This is so much fun. Larry grumbled, sarcasm heavy in his voice. Jack emerged from the bathroom, looking thoroughly exhausted. Okay, Terry, the bathroom is finished, and I personally am pooped. Hey, Janet, Terry asked. Yeah. Where'd you take this picture? Terry held up a framed photograph.